All right, Mr. Buchanan, ready? Mr. Buchanan, you have been involved in the remote viewing field for a good long time and have practiced it on a professional level. Can you give us some indication of your military career and how that relates to this?
The military field use of remote viewing started many years before I actually came to the unit. I came there in 1984 and stayed until 1992. All except the last, all except the first year, I was a trainer for the unit. So I trained the new people coming in the remote viewing skills. Remote viewing basically started back in the early 70s when they found out, I'm going to capsulize here, when they found out that the Russians were getting information that they couldn't find out how they were getting it. Finally, they found out they were using psychics. Part of the mentality of that time was if the Russians have it, we have to have it too. But also they wanted to test to see how effective psychics could be against American top secret targets. And so they rounded up a few psychics and found out that it's extremely effective. It's extremely effective against top secret targets. And this kind of scared them. So they started a project and decided to use psychics for spying. Well, the way Americans feel about psychics, they decided that they were going to use it for spying purposes only and stay completely away from anything that even smites of mind control or what they called active mental work instead of passive mental work. As a result, the remote viewing unit came about. They decided that they had better get some kind of scientific background for it rather than just, voodoo, gut chickens and things like that. So they went out to SRI. They got several researchers out there, most notable Hal Puthoff. Hal had been doing some work with psychic phenomena in the laboratory. He'd been doing some extremely good work. And so they gave him the contract. They funded him to see about training military psychics. He came up with two extremely good remote viewers, one named Pat Price and the other named Ingo Swan. Ingo started teaching military personnel how to do the viewing, and he started using his own method that he developed, which has wound up to be actually one of the highest in accuracy rate. It's an extremely complex methodology, highly protocoled, thousands of rules that you have to remember and get so ingrained that you do automatically. During the same time, Hal Puthoff, Russell Targ, and others out at Stanford Research Institute out in California continued research into the field. At Fort Meade, Maryland, Ingo was teaching us how to actually use it for applications. And we started using it for basically psychic spying. We worked drug targets. We worked, of course, military targets, also political targets, plans and intentions of foreign leaders. And we had an extremely high accuracy rate at it. We basically went to war with everybody. We worked during Grenada. We worked Gaddafi and Libya. We worked, of course, Desert Storm, and Saddam Hussein didn't have a chance. I mean, we knew every day his plans and intentions for the following day with extremely high accuracy. There was no way he had a chance. So, in 1994, the group at Fort Meade was officially disbanded. Now, they had been disbanded 6 times before that, but of course, every day, I mean, the next day, they would report back to work under a different project name and so on. However, in 1994, they were officially disbanded. The members of the unit either retired or got assignments to different places, and the project was ended.
Okay, now let's get a little bit into how it actually works.
Okay.
You stated that there's a high degree of accuracy possible with this discipline.
Yeah.
And in the popular misconception of it, it's sort of equated with meditation or levitation. Or
the answer is, yeah.
Yeah, that you close your eyes and
right. And
basically free associate, but it's not that.
It has nothing to do with that. You do the controlled remote viewing in a wide awake state. You never go into a trance. You never go into meditation. You don't close your eyes. You do it with eyes wide open. You sit there at a table working and actually writing things down as you get them. You receive cues from a monitor. You can also cue your own self as you go. Basically, I think, to put it in its most simplistic form, you are interviewing your subconscious mind and reporting what you get. And so the controlled remote viewing actually deals more with interviewing and reporting than it does with being psychic. Your subconscious mind has that information. We have no idea how. We just know that it's there. And so if you can sit down and learn to interview your own subconscious mind, report cleanly without pollution what it knows, that's basically remote viewing. You don't have to go into an altered state. You don't have to go into a trance. You don't have to gut chickens or goats, read goat entrails or anything like that. No voodoo, no mysticism to it at all. The remote viewing training is very much a training that all interviewers should go through, because it tells you how to interview and not pollute the information you're getting as you report it, and to report it cleanly. And at no time in the remote viewing training do we ever get into the all that is, or the ether, or collective unconscious, or spirit guides or anything like that. It's a very cut and dried scientific process. It can be taught to anyone. Back in the military, one of the reasons they devised that, first of all, is because of its high accuracy rate. Secondly, they wanted something that dealt with the real world. If some general comes in and says, "What is Saddam Hussein planning for tomorrow?" and we come back and we say, "Well, his aura is rose-colored," you're never going to see that general again. They want to know on a map where are his troops going, where are his guns aimed, and all that. In the beginning, when they started this project, they were hoping that they could get something that they could teach to the dumbest grunt soldier on the battlefield in 5 minutes, and have him tell his commander where to point the guns and where the enemy's location was, what was over the hill. They found out that they can do this to the dumbest grunt soldier in the battlefield, but not in 5 minutes. In fact, I've been at it for 16 years now, and I still feel like I'm in kindergarten. I'm still learning. It's a very complex process.
What's so interesting about it is you're screening out information that's extraneous or noisy.
Right.
And there's almost a willing suspension of disbelief that you can't know what you're experiencing, what you're seeing.
That's right. We have many ways to teach students how to get rid of that belief and disbelief and just take the information as it comes. In the unit, we would station someone by the coffee pot, and just as a student, was getting really good and getting cocky about it, they would go up to get coffee to go over to the other building to do their session, and right before they went out the door, the person at the coffee pot would say, "It's probably not Devil's Tower," and turn around and walk off. And just let them deal with it. And of course, they would go over and have a session, and all the way through their session, "Oh, I bet it's Devil's Tower." No, it's probably not Devil's Tower. And dealing with either the belief that it's Devil's Tower or the belief that it's not Devil's Tower is, of course, the same problem. And we would face them with these problems, and over time, they would learn to totally suspend any belief. The phrase we use is that as a remote viewer, you are the village idiot to whom the mayor, the doctor, the lawyers, and everybody else comes for advice, because you're the only one who has the totally pure, clean, unfettered mind that can bring out just the absolute truth.
What's so astounding about this is the very notion that you can give someone an abstract set of map coordinates or coordinate numbers. They know nothing about the target location.
That's right.
And yet, even with those minimal amounts of clues, you get very vivid reports that are extremely detailed.
That's right. One of the things they found out in the beginning was when they were using map coordinates is that map coordinates do have something to do with the site. If it's the closer it gets to 90 degrees north, the colder the climate, And unconsciously, viewers were taking those map coordinates and, applying meaning to them, and that polluted the session. So it got to the point where we were using random numbers, and because we had a very small computer, what I started doing was I would give the viewers, as their numbers, the date of the session, their own viewer number, and the number of the target for the day, so that it had absolutely nothing to do with the content of the material they were looking for, and the viewers still find the information.
I am tempted to ask you, how is that possible?
I don't see how it's possible. There are so many pitfalls to the process that honestly, just to be honest about it, I don't see how it works. I know that it does work. It's worked 1,000 times for me, and it's worked 1,000 times for everyone else. But just the process itself is almost to the point of illogic. It shouldn't work. I don't know what makes it work. But
another aspect of this, I'm familiar with the work of Dr. Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ, and one of the most extraordinary claims that they made in the early mid-1970s is that it is possible to remote view into the future with even a higher degree of accuracy than remote viewing simply present time physical locations.
Right.
How do you do that?
Well, in CRV, in controlled remote viewing, CRV, everything is according to protocols. And methodological wise, that's not even a word, according to the methodology, you treat time and space exactly the same. So once you have trained a viewer to move forward 5 feet and describe the target as it is from that point of view, there's no jump at all to say move forward 5 years and describe the target. And a viewer, having learned to do one, never even questions the other. And so you wait until they have learned how to move around a target spatially. And then you say, move forward 5 days and describe. One of the sites where that's a good training site on that is the attack on Pearl Harbor, to move them back a day, move them forward a day, and then move them through time throughout the day. And by the end of the session, the viewer has gotten his training in moving in time, because it's exactly what he learned to do in space, to move 5 feet.
And presumably you don't in any way suggest what the target era or location.
Oh, absolutely not. No, you never tell the viewer anything.
Now, presumably with something of such historical charge as Pearl Harbor, someone could suddenly say, oh yeah, this is Pearl Harbor,
right,
and begin to extrapolate on conscious knowledge.
Yes, and what you train the viewer to do is you train them to set that aside and say, okay, maybe it is Pearl Harbor, maybe it's not Pearl Harbor. Set that aside. Now then, describe the information I'm asking. And so if they do correctly name the target, you don't let them know. You just tell them, set that aside. We're going to deal with descriptors. And so it takes a trained monitor to not react when they get the target right.
How do you, to what level of resolution and detail, for instance, if you do assign Pearl Harbor as the target, is it such with a highly skilled and trained person that you literally have a camera there on the scene 50 years ago? I mean, what?
Very much so. In the beginning of a session, you get vague, general information. And then what you do is you pick a part of the target and you go after the detail on that. To go after every detail of the bombing of Pearl Harbor, you would have to, go after the the family name of the Japanese pilots, of each one of the pilots, and the markings on their planes and everything. You can go to that detail if you want to burn out a viewer doing it, but you can't do that in 30 minutes. But sure, you can go to all kinds of detail. We have drawn the floor plans of the buildings where the hostages were being held, so that the rescuers would know exactly which door to go into, and we've even placed the terrorists within the building so that they know immediately where the danger is going to be as they go through a door. It's highly accurate. And it's accurate enough to rely upon in conducting an actual operation that involves risking human life. Oh, absolutely. Probably the best one I've ever seen. Joe McMoneagle, we were in condemned buildings. They were been condemned at the end of World War II. And we were always the bastard children of the intel community. Nobody wanted to admit that we even existed. So we got stuck into condemned buildings there at Fort Meade. And normally the wind goes across the building, and we could open the windows in the summer and get a breeze through. Well, one day the wind was going along the building, and everybody inside was just dying from the heat. We couldn't get supplies, so we didn't have air conditioners. And so the door on the end of the building, the door on the end of the building had been, the key had been lost, and the door had been painted over who knows how many times. We wanted to open that door. If we kicked it open, the post engineers would not come and fix it because it was a condemned building. So Joe said, let me try something. He went over to the other building, did a session, and came out with a drawing of a key. He went down to the key maker, had the key made, came back, stuck it into the lock, opened the door. We cracked the paint and opened the door and got some air in. And you can get that type of accuracy with the remote viewing.
That's pretty accurate.
I was impressed. Someday I should be able to do a session that well. I was very impressed with it. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some of the applications for this discipline.
All right.
In terms of military applications, corporate or resource assay applications.
A lot of people have said, first of all, that controlled remote viewing is wasted if all you ever use it for is parapsychology, doing psychic work. It's a direct avenue without pollution into your subconscious mind. Therefore, you can get the information of where you left your car keys. You can get the information of anything you've ever read, all of the memories that are stored in your subconscious and so on. And this is a direct way to do it. So if all you ever use CRV for is parapsychology, you're wasting 9/10 of it. However, the parapsychology gets all the press. And it has the most number of developed applications. First of all, of course, is military applications, military and political espionage. You can go into industrial espionage that's been done. Espionage of any kind, personal. I highly discourage people to use it for personal reasons, but if you want to spy on your family or something, it's there. I think that's a cheapening of it, but anyway. Also, medical diagnostics is the second real field that it went into, simply because it is so good at picking up medical problems that it's many times been proven to be more sensitive than the best medical equipment they have these days. Plus, you can go forward in time, and therefore you not only have a diagnostic of how the person is today, but you can find out what's going to go on, a year from now. Archaeological digs, archaeological work. This is a proven field that it's been working in. A lot of people say, can you use it? If you're so smart, why ain't you rich? And a lot of people are using a form of the remote viewing, one of the other forms, not CRV, for working lottery, working the stock market, gambling, going to Las Vegas and winning lots of money. It's a real application. It works. The applications basically are endless.
Law enforcement, what about missing persons and forensics?
Oh yeah, one of the things I started when I first got out of service was the assigned witness program. I was working for a detective, and one day he said, what I really need is a witness. And I said, hey, I can assign one. And from that came the assigned witness program. And we work missing children cases. We work cases that have been, closed for so many years and never solved. We worked a case this last month where we located a body that had been missing for 9 years. And so we do a lot of police work. We train police. Now, this is a personal thing of mine. I think that you should train cops to do cop work because they know the coppies, they know how to speak cop, everything else. You should train doctors to do medical remote viewing. As long as you have the housewife from Peoria or something who is trying to help the police, she speaks in her own way. She doesn't speak the police language. She doesn't know what to look for. And yet you get an expert cop, an expert detective, and teach him to do the remote viewing. He's going to do 10 times better job because he knows what to look for. He knows how to report it, and he knows what to do. therefore, I'm very much in favor of teaching the police departments the remote viewing, and I've been doing quite a bit of that over the last couple of years. We're getting information back that they're making drug busts, solving crimes, and even doing crime prevention, and having, using the remote viewing to do it, and having a great deal of success with it. It becomes a good forensic tool, police tool. Yeah.
Some of the more exotic applications I'd like to ask about would be whether or not in the course of either military service or private investigations you have trained or worked with people who are attempting to remote view extraterrestrial civilization assets.
First of all, in the military unit, we were never officially tasked to do any UFO targets, extraterrestrial targets, or alien targets, or non-human entity, whatever the catchwords are for that field. We were asked many times to do such targets unofficially and individually on an individual basis for some senator, general, who knows what we did. We also did it for our own information. However, there is a problem with that. And that is that you have no feedback. So it's very easy to guess that, hey, I did it, it must be right. Anyone who tells you that something is 100% right because it was done by remote viewing, watch your wallet. They're trying to get to you. Watch your belief systems. As long as you have humans doing this, nobody's perfect. The remote viewing is accurate only to a degree. One of the reasons we don't use CRV for winning lotteries is because it does a lot of things, but it doesn't do numbers. And each one of these different methodologies has its own strengths and weaknesses, as does each person who does it. Therefore, when you do an esoteric target, if you have a viewer who is trained, who has a proven and databased track record, who can show that he has a degree of accuracy that is dependable, then you can depend on that person. If you go out here and take remote viewing training, and during the training they use non-feedback targets, get out of that school as fast as you can. It's very easy to pat a viewer on the back and say, oh, you're absolutely right because that's what I got too. There's no proof. And so a lot of trainers have found that because of people's interest in UFOs, they can train them on crystal balls or, visual imagery or whatever, pat them on the back, take their money and say, hey, you're great. That's not the way it's done. In fact, if you have someone who is a remote viewer and who is doing UFO targets, what I would want to see first of all is their database track record. For example, if a person has a track record that says, they have proven through databasing that they get the color right 90% of the time, and they tell you that this entity flying this ship has gray skin, I'll believe them. You take another viewer who's just as trained and who gets shape right 90% of the time, but only gets the colors right 10% of the time, I don't care what they tell me, I'm not going to believe it. I'm going to ask them about the shape of the vehicle. I'll find the person who has a track record in colors and ask him about the color of the skin. And you have to be very careful. The fact that it is remote viewing does not mean that it's dependable in any way.
So by combining the data from these various people who have propensities for accuracy in specific areas, you can get a fairly accurate composite.
That's right. If you we call it tasking toward your strengths and training toward your weaknesses. We keep a database, a very detailed database on every student who goes through my course. And when I use them, I look in the database and I find out what they're strong with. And then I will ask them the questions toward their strength. Now, when I go training them, because training continues for some people years at a time, when I train them, I will look in the database and find out what their weaknesses are and customize the training to bring up their weaknesses into strengths. You have to do it that way. If you have a course where somebody takes you through it, teaches you how to view the Galactic Council headquarters, and it may be very esoteric, it may be very sexy, but it's just not real. It's just not.
Have there ever been attempts to extract, to your knowledge, on any official level or anyone has ever confided in you, attempts to use this discipline to perceive specific design, for instance, of extraterrestrial spacecraft or technology systems?
There are two answers to that. The first one is officially, of course not. Actually, of course. There are a lot of people interested in that, interested in back engineering and so on. And the remote viewing is an obvious way to gain information on that. And so, sure, of course we've been used that way. The feedback in that case is, once you build the equipment, does it work? And we've been very successful in that too.
Could you be specific on that?
Probably not, no.
Okay.
I would really care not to, yeah.
Okay. Can you give me a little idea of your military service record and background, your training, vocational training, expertise?
I worked with guided missiles and then had a 12-year break in service. I went back into service as a German linguist and was immediately turned into a Russian linguist and Mongolian linguist. I was the only Mongolian linguist in all 5 services, by the way.
What branch did you serve?
I was Army, I'm sorry. And then I got sent to Augsburg, Germany, where I got into the computer division, programming and actually working the computers because of an incident that happened with the computers right during the time when General Stubblebine was looking for people who had extra-normal abilities, paranormal abilities. There was a quite expensive incident that just happened to be witnessed by one of his officers whom he had trained to find people with these abilities. And I got turned in. And as a result, General Stubblebine came out to the field station and basically he stood me at attention and he got right up in my face like a drill sergeant and he said, I had no idea what was coming. He said, "Did you kill my computers with your mind?" And I mean, it just totally blindsided me. And something told me this man wouldn't be asking the question if he didn't know the answer. And I said, I was imagining my grandchildren still paying for computers. And I said, "Yes, sir, I did." And you can go ahead and bleep this one. This grin came across his face and he said, "Far fucking out. Have I ever got a job for you?" And he took me to Fort Meade and put me into the remote viewing unit. Now, he wanted me to train to do PK, destructive work on foreign computer systems, foreign military computer systems. But the funding for the unit was such that the people who funded, the politicians who funded the unit, felt it would be bad enough if the public ever found out they were funding psychics. But if they were funding things like mind control or computer control through the mind, their political careers would be over. And so the edict came down. You will never do active mental work, only passive. And so for the time I was there, which was about 8.5 years, the last 8.5 years of my career, that's what I did, was passive mental work, CRV spine.
And to your knowledge, is that still the ethical prohibition? I mean, is that still in effect?
Well, since there's no longer a unit, I don't know.
What was the circumstances by which you targeted General Stubblebine's computer?
I had done a program. You really want all this?
Yeah.
I had done a program. It took me about 3 months to write it. There was a sergeant who had wanted the job, and he kept coming in and messing my program over. He'd come in early in the morning or stay late at night and put bombs and problems into the program, and the next day it wouldn't work right. Finally, I had warned him off and everything else, and finally just had to go to the commander and report him. The commander had threatened him with a court-martial if he did it again, because that was costing the field station money. So the day came when I was to demonstrate this program. It was a program that tied 95 computer systems from 12 different countries together and made them all talk to each other. The program, I came in early, set up the program, tested it out, everything worked. And so I went to the bathroom to make sure I didn't have any creases and not a hair was out of place and all this. We had the generals from all 12 countries, ours included, and all 4 services that were there at the field station. Had more brass in that room than has probably been, in a room in the Pentagon. And so I did my little song and dance for an introduction, and then I hit the enter key, and the screen went blank. And I looked up, and everybody had started kind of chuckling. I looked up, and here was this sergeant at the door, and he said, "Gotcha," and turned around and walked out. And I got flaming mad. I mean, just madder than I can remember being in years. And I basically wanted him to die and realized from past experiences that, some damage could be done. So I turned back to the computer. And at that time, intelligence computers and basically all NATO countries went down. For a still classified amount of time, everybody at the field station went to work on time and came back on time and carried crossword puzzle books and, novels to read and all that, so that the Russian spies in the sky could see us business as normal. What I found out just year before last was that the Soviet bloc countries during that same period of time were going to work with their crossword puzzle books and coming home because their computers were down too. And so basically during that period of time, neither the Soviet bloc nor the NATO countries had any intelligence effort along our common border. They estimated that the cost to the U.S. alone was probably about $5 billion before everything got replaced and up and running again. So that's that story.
That's very interesting. It's extraordinary. It really sheds light on just what you can do with this stuff. It's really quite powerful.
Well, this is one of the things. See, my native ability had been always in PK. The psychic part of it, I had never been able to do anything like that. And so when they brought me to the unit and they said, no, you're not doing PK because we don't do active work, then I was just another grunt off the battlefield. And so I was sort of another test case to see if they could teach this to just this idiot that walked in the door. And I learned to do it, and then wound up being the trainer for the new people coming in over the next 7 years. So it can be taught to anyone.
Yeah. Okay. I think what's our timeline on here? All right. What can you tell me about the specific targeting of UFO objects and people or entities?
Do you mean special cases or how to do it?
Yes, well, how to do it and what special cases to your knowledge have been done or...
Let me start with how to do it. First of all, in the same manner that you would do any other target, you give the viewer a set of coordinates. Now, this is in controlled remote viewing. You give the viewer a set of coordinates. They have no idea what the target is. Throughout the session, you don't let them have any idea of what the target is. You ask about specifics after they have described the specifics. And so the viewer is going along and he says, okay, there is a metallic object. You say, okay, describe the metallic object. He'll start describing it and he'll say hollow inside. You say, okay, describe the insides. And at no point do you ever let the viewer know what it is they're doing. But as they describe, you keep getting to more and more detailed things that you need to describe. The controls, the mechanisms, the person or being that is driving the thing, its surroundings. Then you can have them located on a map, whatever. And so that's the method for doing it. It's very important that you do not let the viewer know, because once they know, their imagination goes wild. Specific targets, probably the most famous targets are the ones that were done by Pat Price originally. And without letting the viewers know that they were working any of these targets, we have had other viewers who have exceptionally high accuracy rates, documented high track records, work the same targets, and we found basically the same things. There's Mount Zeal in right about the center of Australia, which seems to be some kind of a personnel center. You find humans, greys, and several other types there. And lots of activity all the time. Excuse me. In Gunyani, in Zimbabwe, there's another center, and that seems to be their repair center, where they do most of their maintenance work, repair work, and such as that. There are 3 other centers that we found, and many more that we know about, know the location of, and so on. The other types of targets we get that way are certain incidents that happen, sightings. What happened at Roswell? What happened at, I just went blank, the base in England.
Bainbridge, Woodbridge?
Right. And what actually happened, describe the equipment, describe what was there, and so on. And so we get many of those targets, and we simply give the answer back. We have had from companies, corporations, a surprising number of targets dealing with UFOs, UFO technology, also certain UFO-related events, and especially locations. They're very interested in locations. There was a corporation not too long ago that wound up looking for certain artifacts that were left behind by a UFO that evidently landed and then left. And we found it, and we had like 5 viewers who all described the same place in a certain crater on the moon, which was a surprise to me because, you know, my pollution was, oh, they're talking about the Earth. And the corporation was very happy with finding that information, and it will influence some of their proposed sites, work sites on the lunar technology that they're building.
Have you ever been asked to look for specific ET facilities on the moon?
I haven't personally. Now, I've found some there, but I haven't personally been tasked specifically with that. But other ET locations, yes.
Mars, for instance, has that also been targeted?
Oh, yeah, yeah. The history and the history of Mars is very fascinating. The first time that I ever experienced what's called a perfect site integration. It's not an out-of-body experience, not even related to it, but all of a sudden you're working along and you get so entranced in the site and you start getting so much from your subconscious that you quit paying attention to the room around you, and all of a sudden you look up and it's as though you're there. You feel the wind on your face, the sun on your face, and all that. And I was doing a session one time, and the monitor said something, and I looked up, and I was looking down this corridor, and there was sand that had blown in. The corridor was open at the end, and I walked down to the end of the corridor and stepped out on this little ledge type thing. There was a slanted wall going back behind me, and out in front of me I could see an extremely dark sky, but the sun was out, and all of these monument type things and sort of just red desert. And about that time, all of a sudden it dawned on me, wait a minute, I'm not in Kansas anymore. And all of a sudden I was back in the session. You know, the shock of it woke me up. But it was later when I saw the actual ground pictures taken by the Mars landers. My first impression when I first saw those pictures was, yeah, been there, done that. Because, it was exactly what I had seen when I was in that session. For the longest time after that, the building I had been in with the slanted walls going back really had me confused. And then one day up at SRI, I saw what was then, at that time, some classified pictures of these pyramids and the face on the moon, the face on Mars, and all of a sudden I realized exactly where I was, and this was a couple of years later. I went back and looked at the tasking, and sure enough, the coordinates I had been given were for that exact location on Mars.
Have you actually seen with your eyes photographs, clear photographs of the monuments on Mars?
Pretty clear, yeah.
And these were not from the 1976 Viking?
I would imagine they were.
They were.
I would imagine so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get when you say they were classified, that would imply that perhaps they're much more higher quality than what the
So these are extremely high quality. The ones that I've seen in books and all that, I mean, you know, let's use logic here. They have spy-in-the-sky satellites that can read your license plate. And all they can see on Mars, which has no atmosphere to mess anything up, is a blurry image. This is not right. You know, of course, they're not releasing to the public what they have. And what they still have classified, I don't know.
Were these color or black and white?
The first one I saw was black and white, yeah.
Could you describe what you saw?
Just a very detailed picture of the, and sort of an aerial view of that area.
And was the face visible?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it was, you actually saw it clear, not in fuzzy detail?
Oh yeah, extremely clear. I mean, you could see, you could see details in the ground and things like that. If you looked really hard, you could.
Yeah. The photos that were released from the Mars Global Surveyor that Dr. Malin was in charge of, that alleged to be the face, seemed to me to be a Photoshop smear job.
It could have been.
Because it no longer had any recognizable features to it. And
yeah.
I recognized the Photoshop filter that he probably used to scramble the image. But from what you saw of the classified material...
You know, we're going to send up $1 billion probe like that with a brownie camera in it? I don't think so. You know, we've got the cameras that can, like I say, from 200 miles up can read your license plate. That's what we're going to put into the probes, of course. Yeah. And so anytime you come back with a fuzzy picture like that, you can figure it's been, what would you call it, dehanced?
Well put.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned a moment ago about the history of Mars. Does that mean that on some professional level you've dealt with divining what that history is through RV?
Yes. Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Basically that...
The switch tapes? 5 minutes?
We got about 8 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, why don't you pop another one in? No?
Well,
We can.
yeah,
Okay.
he's out
I
there.
want to buy some more.
Okay.
Yeah, Dennis is out there.
Okay.
And so he's
we
waiting
should do
around.
that.